Members of the public are invited to observe, which includes attending, listening, and taking notes, but does not include participating in the meeting or addressing the commission. Actions that purposely interfere or attempt to interfere with the commencement or conducting of the meeting, or inhibit the audience's ability to observe or listen to the meeting, including attempts by the audience members to address the commission while the meeting is in progress, are not permitted. Any persons engaging in such behavior will be asked to leave the building. Anyone who refuses to leave voluntarily will be escorted from the building. Additionally, documents presented to the chairman, commissioners, or staff during the meeting will not become a part of the official record of any commission proceeding, nor will they require further action by the commission. If you wish to comment on an ongoing proceeding before the commission, please visit our website for more information. Also, representatives from FERC's Office of Public Participation are located just outside the commission meeting room to answer questions, assist the public with submissions and inquiries. Thank you for your cooperation.
We're now ready to begin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, commissioners. This is the time and place that has been noticed for the open meeting of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to consider the matters that have been duly posted by the commission. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Commissioners, since the September open meeting, the Commission has issued 50 notational orders. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, and good morning to everyone. Before I begin my opening comments today, I'd like to note and acknowledge that October is recognized as National Disability Employment Awareness Month, where we celebrate the many contributions and achievements employees with disabilities have given. I want to give a shout out to Accessible FERC and their great programming on disability awareness, as well as FERC's new appointed Disability Program Manager, Makala Atkinson. I knew I was going to stumble. Thank you for your work. October is also Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and this month marks the 20th anniversary of cybersecurity awareness. The nature of cybersecurity threats to our nation's grid require constant monitoring and vigilance. That is why, in January 2023, the Commission strengthened the cybersecurity of the grid by issuing a final rule on internal network security monitoring for high and medium impact bulk electric system cyber systems. In March, we expanded the supply chain risk management practices for low impact BES cyber systems by approving a new standard that requires entities with low impact assets to have methods for determining and disabling vendor remote access. Finally, continuing to build upon the mandatory framework of our cybersecurity reliability standards, in April, we issued a final rule providing incentive-based rate treatment for utilities making certain voluntary cybersecurity investments. Moving on to another reliability matter, which I would like to highlight because recently we received a letter from the market monitors of all 6 RTOs and ISOs expressing their support for the recommendations in NASB's Gas Electric Harmonization Forum report. As I've noted previously, the primary recommendation of the NASB report is the establishment of a NERC-like organization for the natural gas industry. And I welcome the support of all 6 independent market monitors, not only for NASB's recommendations, but for their encouragement that FERC, quote, take actions to use the recommendations in this report. I could not agree more. I also want to remind everyone that November 9th, the Commission will hold its annual Reliability Technical Conference, The purpose of this conference is to discuss policy issues related to the reliability and security of the bulk power system. The conference will also discuss what, if any, impacts there may be to the electric reliability as a result of the Environmental Protection's proposed rule under Section 111 of the Clean Air Act. Moving on to the discussion and agenda items, I want to talk about one of them. As I mentioned earlier, we have taken several actions this year to address cyber and physical security, as well as preparing for extreme weather. Today, the focus is on ensuring the reliability as our resource mix changes. Item number E1 is a final rule to address inverter-based resources. The mix of generation resources connecting the bulk power system is rapidly changing, including the addition of an unprecedented proportion of non-synchronous resources projected to connect over the next decade, including many generation resources that employ inverters, rectifiers, and converters to provide energy to the bulk power system. Let me restate that in English. We have a lot of clean energy and renewable energy resources that are being connected to the grid. And this new rule is a great step to address what we see as reliability concerns regarding this transition. According to NERC, the rapid integration of IBRs is the most significant driver of grid transformation on the bulk power system. There have been at least 12 documented events on the bulk power system, with an average loss of approximately 1,000 megawatts of IBRs, which demonstrate the risk that planners and operators must account for. However, IBRs also present new opportunities to support the grid and respond to abnormal grid conditions. When appropriately programmed, IBRs can provide operational flexibility, and the ability of IBRs to perform with precision, speed, and control could mitigate disturbances on the bulk power system. The draft final rule directs NERC to develop new or modified reliability standards that address reliability gaps related to IBRs, including data sharing, data and model validation, planning and operational studies, and performance requirements. I sincerely want to thank the team for their efforts to bring this final rule to the Commission. Lastly, I want to say a word. I want to take a moment to express my heartfelt appreciation for the diligence, expertise, and profound dedication exhibited by our staff. Your meticulous work, the countless hours spent researching, analyzing, and preparing for necessary documentation has not gone unnoticed. The unwavering commitment to upholding the highest standards of the FERC is commendable. Your thorough and well-considered recommendations serve as a solid foundation upon which we make our decisions. Ensuring they are fair, just, and in the public interest is in the interest of all of the parties involved in the legal and energy community. FERC thrives on diverse viewpoints, but it is the unity, professionalism, and mutual respect that truly define our organizational culture. Your continuous effort to navigate complex regulatory landscapes with integrity and a sense of purpose significantly enhances FERC's credibility and effectiveness. So, I don't do this often enough. I want to thank each and every one of you for your invaluable work and your dedication to the mission of this organization. And with that, I will turn to my colleagues, starting with Commissioner Daly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I'll mention is that E1 is an absolutely critical order. It's long overdue. I write about that, but I am very pleased that the chairman brought this forward for us to vote on. I think this is arguably the most important action we've taken in reliability in the last year or two, and I just want to commit it to everybody's attention because it is truly important. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Clements.
Thank you, Chairman Phillips, and good morning. It's nice to see you all. We gather at a bit of a chaotic moment on the world stage, so I just want to acknowledge our collective angst over the suffering in the Middle East right now, as all of us feel. in a big way. On a positive note, before I get started, I wanted to take a minute to express my own personal thanks to a member of our staff who is departing. This is her last meeting. Sarah Stenzler, who is a member of our Protective Operations Division, has been just the model that Chairman Phillips was talking about with her dedication to this agency. She has distinguished public service as a member of the Marines prior to her time at FERC, and she has been there with me on a lot of my trips and experiences to keep me safe and to keep me comfortable, and done the same for my team. I know her colleagues feel the same way. So just take a minute to say thank you to Sarah. Thanks. I'm also happy that we've moved back to the 11th floor, so thank you to Chairman Phillips, to Ronan, to OED, to Anton and Mark for getting it done. It's really nice, so hopefully you can all come visit. I'll just speak to E1 as well on the agenda today. I want to thank the team also, Nicole, Eugene, and the rest of the team who worked really hard right up until the last minute on this rule, so thank you for that. And the chairman described what the rule is going to do, and it directs NERC to establish standards to allow grid operators to better model and plan for how inverter-based resources operate. I think it was also important that Chairman Phillips mentioned that integrating IBRs, this generation with built-in computers, provides an exciting opportunity for dynamic response and for increased operational flexibility. My understanding through NERC and through staff is that most of the IBRs on our grid will likely to be able to meet any performance requirements that NERC might set forward with simple software upgrades. That said, there is an increasingly small percentage of older IBRs that may not be able to update their software to comply. The rule we are passing today directs NERC to consider exceptions for these older IBRs. I hope to see such exceptions, as doing so will allow these older resources to continue to provide value to customers without compromising system reliability. Similarly, today's order directs NERC to consider, but does not mandate, data sharing requirements from transmission owners to the IBR generation owners. The record in the proceeding indicates that generator owners require data to support the modeling and performance requirements we are now directing NERC to create. I understand that in some cases procedures do exist for access to this data, but to me, if our goal is to ensure that these resources can perform as expected, I would have preferred to require information sharing, not only from IBR resources to transmission operators, but also in the reverse. So I hope that NERC will mandate such sharing in its standard development process. I think it's kind of tough to make people bake the cake without giving them the recipe. As I said when we proposed this rule, today's order is exactly the kind of action the Commission should be taking. We all agree on that. We are a technology-neutral regulator, and our responsibility is to facilitate what's happening on the grid using the lessons we have learned to safely integrate IBR resources or any new kinds of resources. I'm happy to hand it over to NERC and look forward to what they'll bring back to us on this front. So thanks again. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Christie.
Hi, Commissioner Clements. I want to recognize Sarah Stenzler back there. Sarah is part of our crack security team, and she's going to be leading us to move down to Roanoke. We're going to miss her quite a bit. She's a fellow Marine, Semper Fi, and therefore I always felt safe with her as a fellow Marine, or maybe I shouldn't have. But we're going to miss Sarah a lot, and Sarah, we really enjoyed your service and want to recognize that, and so we'll miss you. With that, that's it.
Thank you. Sarah, I'm pretending that you're not leaving, so just know that we're going to miss you. Madam Secretary, we're prepared to move to the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Since the issuance of the Sunshine Act notice on October 12, 2023, items G1 and G2 have been stricken from this morning's agenda. Your consent agenda is as follows. Electric items, E1, E2, E3, E4, E5, E6, E7, E8, E9, E10, E11, E12, E13, and E14. Miscellaneous items, M1. Hydro items, H1 and H2. Certificate items, C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6, and C7. As to E1, Commissioner Danley is concurring with a separate statement. As to E9, Commissioner Christie is concurring with a separate statement. As to E10, Commissioner Danley is concurring with a separate statement. As to C1, Commissioner Danley is concurring in part and dissenting in part with a separate statement. And Commissioner Clements is concurring in part and dissenting in part with a separate statement. As to C2, Commissioner Danley is concurring in part and dissenting in part with a separate statement. Commissioner Clements is dissenting in part with a separate statement. And Commissioner Christie is concurring with a separate statement. As to C3, Commissioner Danley is concurring in part and dissenting in part with a separate statement. And Commissioner Clements is dissenting in part with a separate statement. As to C4, Commissioner Danley is concurring in part and dissenting in part with a separate statement. And Commissioner Clements is dissenting in part with a separate statement. As to C5, Commissioner Danley is concurring in part and dissenting in part with a separate statement. And Commissioner Clements is dissenting with a separate statement. As to C6, Commissioner Danley is concurring in part and dissenting in part with a separate statement. And Commissioner Clements is dissenting with a separate statement. And as to C7, I want to go back to C5 and read that again. As to C5, Commissioner Danley is concurring in part and dissenting in part with a separate statement. And Commissioner Clements is dissenting in part with a separate statement. Thank you. Apologize for the mistake. As to C6, Commissioner Danley is concurring in part and dissenting in part with a separate statement. And Commissioner Clements is dissenting in part with a separate statement. As to C7, Commissioner Danley is concurring with a separate statement. We are now ready to take a vote on this morning's consent agenda. The vote begins with Commissioner Christie.
Okay, I have two concurrences again, E9, the NIPSCO case, and C2, which is the WBI certificate case. And noting that, I vote aye on everything.
Commissioner Clements.
Noting my concurrence in part and dissent in part in C1 and my partial dissents in C2, C3, C4, C5, and C6, I vote aye.
Commissioner Danley.
Noting my concurrences in E1, E10, and C7, and my concurrence in part and dissent in part in C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, and C6, I vote aye.
And Chairman Phillips.
I vote aye.
There are no discussion and presentation items on this morning's agenda.
All right, I will now turn to my colleagues for any closing remarks that they might have, starting with Commissioner Danley.
Nothing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Clements.
It's lunchtime.
I'll let that be the final word. We are adjourned. Uneventful.
Gets me every time.